Slide, please.
Okay, we're on? Okay, he pointed to me. I can go now. I'd like to say good afternoon and welcome. I'm Councilman Jim Gennaro, Chair of the City Council's Committee on Environmental Protection. Today, we're holding a hearing on 5 proposed bills related to capturing and retaining stormwater runoff via so-called stormwater best management practices, known as BMPs. The bills are intros number 628, 629, and 630, sponsored by me. Intro 321, sponsored by Councilman Yaski, and Intro 178, sponsored by Councilman Otto. BMTs take advantage of the drainage potential of vegetated areas, both natural and built, to capture stormwater before it reaches the sewer system and empties into the city's water bodies. Combined sewer overflows, or CSOs as they're sometimes called, dump, believe it or not, 27 billion gallons of untreated combined sewage and stormwater into our surrounding water bodies, making CSOs the largest contributor of fecal coliform and other pathogens. CSOs also convey other pathogens as well as nitrogen, which leads to algal blooms and depleted oxygen levels in local water bodies. Other stormwater that enters separate storm sewers also empties into those waters, carrying with it toxins, nitrogen, pathogens, and the like. Last, some stormwater flows overland directly into our water bodies, further polluting them with oil residue, nitrogen, and other toxins. So, of course, stormwater is the culprit. Now, what do we do? Alleviating CSOs is and has been a major city priority that has consumed and continues to consume tremendous amounts of effort and resources. For about 20 years now, the city, working with state, federal, and local partners, has been struggling with this matter. The city is currently under a third administrative consent order, which had started in 2004, and that consent order has superseded the 1992 and 1996 consent orders. The price tag for these efforts runs into the billions of dollars, and the time frame and vision takes us out to 2017 and beyond, at which point the city will finally have, if everything goes as planned, a citywide long-term control plan for managing our CSOs. The legislation contemplated today looks to create a system that would capture more storm water at the source by using so-called green infrastructure such as parks and gardens, yards, green roofs, grass swales along streets, better tree pit design, and the like. It also calls for taking stormwater issues into account for all significant capital projects so that we think more about solving CSO and other stormwater problems each time we add to the city's built environment. Taken together, the measures proposed today would, along other things, reduce pollutants and pathogens entering our water, could allow for greater recreational uses, and would increase the ecological health of those waters. It would also expand green space in the city and supplement through green practices the engineering approaches to stormwater management that we have relied on and often have let us down in the past. I look forward to hearing from the administration on this matter, and they're here today. I'm happy to have them. I understand that they are currently engaged in planning and other activities that will contribute significantly to reaching the goals of the legislation we are hearing today, and I certainly appreciate those efforts. Indeed, the Mayor's Plan NYC 2030 acknowledges that current practices have, quote, created barriers to our ability to assess and develop comprehensive policies for the deployment of BMPs on a citywide basis, close quote. The plan calls for an interagency task force, pilot programs, that is the plan, when I say the plan, I mean Plan YC, calls for an interagency task force, pilot programs, data collection and publication, and other measures that would lead to the better use of BMPs to reduce CSOs, among other benefits. I believe this legislation under consideration today will help lock in that effort and commit the city to this approach over the long term. It's certainly necessary that we take all of the good ideas from Plan NYC to the extent possible and put those into legislation where they will live on, beyond the Bloomberg administration, beyond my tenure here, and, beyond this council. So it's critically important that we reduce the writing, get this done. We're both, working along the same lines, and that is excellent. And I think unprecedented in my 24 years in city government. So we got a good thing going here. I also look forward to the testimony of a number of advocacy groups that have spent a great deal of time and effort pushing for cleaner water. Of course, the SWIM Coalition was with me this morning at the press conference. I certainly appreciate all of the members of the SWIM Coalition who are out there with us in the chilly morning this morning. All the pushing for cleaner water, which will lead to a more complete range of recreational uses of our waterways and better ecological health as well. But before I call the administration to testify, we're joined by Councilmember Ignizio from Staten Island, Councilmember Eugene from Brooklyn. We're joined by policy analyst of the committee, Dan Avery, Laura Popa from the Speaker's staff. And in our first hearing with us, we have a new counsel to the committee, Samara Swanson, to my left. And Samara has come to us highly recommended with a resume that reads like a major motion picture. And so we're very, very grateful to have her with us. She follows in the footsteps of the beloved Donna DiCostanzo, who served this committee so long and so well. But we're absolutely delighted to have Samara with us. This is her first hearing, so everyone be nice to her. And so with that said, I would like to call the administration to testify. We have Carter Strickland from, I guess, the Mayor's Office of Operations, and my friend Angela Licata from the New York City DEP.
Chairs.
I was just explaining to Samara, I should have mentioned this to her before, but it is our practice in this committee to swear our witnesses in, and so I was just going through that little protocol with her so that she knows how to swear at the people. And so swear at, swear in. Okay, so if you would swear the witnesses, then we could commence.
Carter, do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth today?
I do.
And Angela Carter, do you also swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth today? Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. So thank you. Thank you, Samara. It's a pleasure having you both here today, and we look forward to your testimony. I know you've had a lot of colloquy with the central staff on this issue, and we're grateful for your presence here today, and we look forward to your testimony.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Gennaro and committee members. On behalf of the administration, I will address the important stormwater management issues that are the subject of this hearing. We welcome the opportunity to work with the Council on stormwater issues and look forward to an ongoing dialogue about stormwater management. In my testimony today, I will first address and discuss.
Carter, I'm told by the sergeant that you haven't stated your name for the record, and I should have asked you to do that. So sorry about that. Thank you, Sergeant. If you could just state your name for the record, we'd appreciate that.
Okay. For the record, my name is Carter Strickland, the Mayor's Office of Operations, Long-Term Planning and Sustainability.
Thank you.
In my testimony today, I will first discuss general water quality and stormwater management principles, and then the stormwater policy commitments of Plan NYC, Mayor Bloomberg's long-term planning and sustainability plan, and related efforts in Jamaica Bay. I will address the bills before the committee and will be available to answer questions along with my colleague Brianna Wolf, Angela Licata to my left, and representatives from the Parks Department. To give a little background, New York is surrounded by a maze of waterways that combine to form a rich natural estuary. When Henry Hudson first sailed these waters, there were 350 square miles of oyster beds. And for a time after settlement, these were a great delicacy. But several hundred years of dumping sewage, dumping garbage and piping sewage industrial wastes into the surrounding waters ruined many of these natural resources. The good news is that we have done better, and after spending billions of dollars over many decades on sewer systems and wastewater treatment plants, the city now treats virtually all of its sewage before discharge. That investment means that New York Harbor is cleaner than it has been in over 100 years, and we are regaining our natural heritage. But the harbor is still not clean enough all of the time. Because most of our combined sewer system was constructed before separate storm and sanitary sewers were recognized as state-of-the-art, rainwater is collected along with sewage. Since the majority of land in New York City is developed or paved over with impervious surfaces, stormwater runs off this land and into the combined sewer system instead of into the ground. During significant storms, the additional rainfall can overwhelm the capacity of our sewer lines and wastewater treatment plants, and this excess discharge is diverted to water bodies through combined sewer overflows to avoid backup into houses or street flooding. CSOs, as we'll call them from now on, contain raw sewage and therefore increase the levels of fecal coliform, as you've noted, other pathogens, street litter, and other floatable, sedimentation, odors, and eventually decrease the levels of dissolved oxygen in receiving waters. These effects limit aquatic wildlife and recreational use, as long as the contaminant levels remain high. The city's investments in infrastructure projects have resulted in enormous improvements, increasing CSO capture rates from 30% in 1980 to 70% today. Nevertheless, there are still CSOs in the city. We acknowledge that. The pollutants from these discharges are removed quickly from many areas of our harbor, but tend to linger in many of our man-made and other tributaries, especially those that are small, have limited tidal action, or adjacent to former industrial sites with historic discharges. In those waters, the effects of CSOs have created a chronic water quality problem. That is why Plan NYC focuses on improving the water quality of these tributaries as part of our effort to open 90% of our waterways to recreation. That's the goal in Plan NYC, and we're sticking to it. In general, there are two approaches to improving our water quality, and the city is following both paths. First, by law, the city must create a capital plan based on hard infrastructure solutions to improve water quality. These solutions are mandatory and budgeted. As Commissioner Lloyd of DEP testified before this committee in February, the agency is building 2 major detention tanks to store sewer flow for gradual release to wastewater treatment plants after storms have abated. One is underneath Flushing Meadows Park and will capture approximately 800 million gallons per year of CSOs. And it began operation last spring. The other, at Partagat Basin in Canarsie, will be able to detain nearly 1.3 billion gallons of CSOs per year and is scheduled for completion in 2011. DEP is upgrading several pumping stations to increase pumping capacity and divert more CSOs away from narrow industrial waterways. The full infrastructure build-out currently envisioned in DEP's long-term control plans will increase CSO capture rates to 75%. Second, to increase CSO capture rates further, the city is exploring the implementation of stormwater management systems to reduce the amount of rainfall that flows into the combined sewers. These techniques, as you've mentioned, are known as best management practices, or BMPs. These have the potential to compensate for some of the dramatic loss of green space that detains stormwater before development, and could be a pragmatic and sustainable approach to further reducing CSOs. I will discuss the city's experience with BMP shortly. Because the city's CSOs come from temporary surpluses of water that overwhelm the existing infrastructure, we strongly believe, as a matter of first principle, that our efforts must be directed to finding those best management practices that most effectively reduce the quantity of water flowing into our combined sewer system, rather than those that may be directed to treating water quality at the source. Of course, many do double duty, and we like that. Generally speaking, best management practices comprise a wide range of structural technologies and non-structural techniques to reduce runoff. Some structural techniques rely upon increasing infiltration of rainwater to the soil, and are therefore suitable to soil types and groundwater certain soil types and groundwater table characteristics. Infiltration technologies may have higher maintenance costs if they are completely underground. Examples of these include porous pavement, infiltration basins, trenches, and bioretention areas with special soil mixtures. Another group of best management practices relies on detention and retention practices to temporarily store stormwater to control runoff. Examples of these include rooftop detention systems, stormwater ponds, and wetlands. Vegetation infiltration and retention areas will also reduce runoff through biological uptake of water and will directly improve water quality through the biological uptake of sediment and other pollutants. Manufactured pre-treatment technologies include oil grit separators, water quality access holes, catch basin inserts, and the effectiveness of all of these structural BMPs, however, must be maintained through inspection and cleaning. We note that in less urbanized areas, it may be possible to manage stormwater by simply retaining natural systems and precluding development. For example, New Jersey's latest stormwater regulations impose a 300-foot buffer around certain pristine streams, expressly for the purpose of controlling stormwater pollution. And where we have areas of low density, the city has already utilized natural drainage corridors to convey, treat, and detain stormwater prior to its release. And these similar natural control systems are implemented in the Blue Belt's network of wetlands that drain water from 10,000 acres in Staten Island. A similar effort uses the space-intensive natural stormwater BMPs in the Kensico Reservoir watershed. But the city typically does not have existing natural buffers or the space to construct them. Moreover, as recognized in a U.S. Department of Transportation study called Stormwater Best Management Practices in what they call an ultra-urban setting, and that's certainly us, 2002 study, notes that the feasibility of various BMP technologies is limited by space and design requirements, and dense land use likely precludes conventional structural BMPs that you might see in the suburbs, such as extended detention dry ponds, wet ponds, and infiltration basins. BMPs may also include non-structural techniques, such as street sweeping, sewer inlet cleaning, and other management measures. Water conservation incentives and measures may also play a part in protecting our water infrastructure by reducing the total volume of water that is ultimately discharged to our water treatment plants. Accordingly, the city must act responsibly to study and evaluate BMPs, determine whether they can be constructed here in the first place, whether their effectiveness decreases over time, the cost of construction and maintenance, how each one compares with other stormwater management options. Okay, so that's our general take, and it's important to understand the general background. But what is the city doing? The administration is promoting BMPs through two main initiatives. Plan NYC addresses stormwater management problems on a citywide basis. It created an interagency BMP task force to develop strategies for promoting stormwater management. The group includes representatives from the Mayor's Office of Operations, DEP, the Department of Transportation, the Department of Buildings, Department of Parks and Recreation, Department of Design and Construction, Department of City Planning, the Office of Management and Budget, the Mayor's Office of Contract Services, the Mayor's Office of Capital Projects, SCA, and the Economic Development Corporation. I think we've left very few off, but if we did, we're certainly trying to catch all of them. Anybody related in any way with stormwater management. The task force was launched in May 2007 and to date has had over 35 hours of internal meetings, and those are continuing. We've held 2 public stakeholder meetings as well. And our goal is, and our commitment that we're sticking to, is to create a comprehensive BMP plan by October 2008. In a pre-existing and now parallel effort, the city developed the Jamaica Bay Watershed Protection Plan and released it on October 1, 2007 as required by Local Law 71. The Jamaica Bay Plan, developed through extensive work over 2 years, addresses flooding, ecological protection, water quality and planning throughout that one particular watershed, which is a large one. It recognizes that one of the key challenges to the health of the bay is controlling untreated discharges from the 40% of the city that drains into the Jamaica Bay watershed. The impacts of these discharges are heightened by landside development, bulkhead construction, dredging, and wetlands fill, all of which have altered the ecosystem. Based on preliminary estimates of cost and effectiveness and certain assumptions about the penetration of BMP technologies throughout the watershed, the Jamaica Bay Plan estimated that the use of BMPs could reduce 6 to 24% of the untreated discharges to the bay. At a cost, however, of $400 million to $5.2 billion just in that watershed. Clearly, investments on that scale should be considered carefully. In order to test DEP's assumptions and estimates, the Jamaica Bay Plan proposed several pilot projects. In the upcoming year, DEP will build a blue roof and a green roof on 2 existing commercial buildings for a comparative study. In conjunction with the Department of Parks and Recreation and the Gaia Institute, DEP will also construct 5 innovative designs for tree pits that will contain underground water storage devices. DEP will also begin the distribution of 1,000 rain barrels to homeowners, expand its program to remove sediments that block the sewer system, design the introduction of the oyster reef and rib mussels, which happen to be our natural filters many years ago, build porous pavement on DEP facility parking lots and other areas, and roll out a water conservation program to reduce discharges. All of these pilot projects, which were introduced in last year's budget, included in last year's budget for the 2008 fiscal year, will be rigorously monitored and studied. The results of these studies will allow DEP to set specific CSO reduction targets while increasing sustainability and effectiveness in Jamaica Bay. In addition, DEP will be letting a contract to support Plan YC by evaluating the effectiveness of stormwater BMPs contained in the Jamaica Bay Plan with regard to other water bodies. The study will evaluate strategies for high and low volume stormwater capture at high and low costs. It will also quantify the benefits from BMPs in new construction compared to BMPs on existing properties of different types. Recommendations from the completed study will become the basis for a DEP-issued BMP design manual and revisions to the sewer code to better facilitate stormwater management. The Interagency BMP Task Force report will include information and suggestions from the Jamaica Bay Plan and its pilot projects, as well as ongoing and related city efforts, such as the work of the Interagency Flooding Task Force, the Department of Transportation, and DEP's inclusion of 2 large vegetated swales in the Belt Parkway renovation project. The Interagency BMP Task Force report will also reflect the efforts of the Parks Department's Green Streets program, which has piloted the small-scale diversion of water from roadbeds and sidewalks into planting, and will release a monitoring report on plant mortality and the quantity and quality of runoff within the year. The Interagency BMP Task Force report will provide for the incorporation of proven, soft infrastructure solutions into the design and construction of public and private projects on a citywide basis. The task force will also examine regulatory and financial incentives for retrofitting existing buildings and facilities and the financial ways and means for building and maintaining a distributed stormwater control network. The BMP Task Force report is but one element of Plan YC's efforts to improve water quality, preserve natural areas, and protect the city from projected impacts of climate change. Related water quality elements of the plan include the expansion of green and permeable open spaces across the city to reduce stormwater runoff, such as the 1 Million Tree Initiative launched on October 9th, the expansion of the Blue Belt program to drain water from 4,000 additional acres on Staten Island, and extension of that program to 3 locations in Queens, being Udall's Cove and Brookville Boulevard West, Springfield Lake, and Baisley Pond, the adoption of high-level storm sewers in appropriate locations, and the development of a comprehensive wetlands policy. The administration has also proposed a tax abatement for the private construction of green roofs to provide seed money for that industry and, hopefully, to gain information and reduce runoff in the meantime. Together, these elements will improve the quality of New York City's waters. The question has been raised about why we cannot adopt specific BMPs that are currently implemented on some scale in other cities without further study. The general answer is that no other city is like New York, and no city has adopted BMPs on the scale that we propose. For example, Milwaukee has adopted a rain barrel giveaway program, and Chicago has a green roof incentive program and a demonstration project on its City Hall. Those efforts, while admirable, are simply not on the scale that we need to adopt to make a dent in our CSO problem. BMPs that work in cities such as Chicago and Milwaukee, which have very suburban characteristics right inside the city limits, may not work here. Our strategies must be tailored to New York City's densely built environment and take into account the overall impermeability of the city's topography. Other programs adopted in Portland and Seattle, for example, are suitable for those temperate zones, but are untested in our wintry conditions, where frozen ground may limit the control of snowmelt or winter rain and cause considerable damage to other properties or street flooding or ice. Philadelphia has a program to create rainwater parks and empty lots, But that program was made possible in part to the city's loss of 10% of its population between 1980 and 2000. Fortunately, New York City does not face that same fate. There's no place like New York, and we must take the time to find the right BMPs to work here. Related issues specific to New York are the cost of construction in a dense urban environment and of maintaining BMPs over time. The city recognizes that any comprehensive stormwater management plan will have to address such costs. BMPs on municipal property will have to be supported by the public budget. DEP's construction and maintenance of the water and sewer system are supported by fees paid by property owners for water and sewer service. BMPs on private land will have to be supported by funding as well, through some combination of tax incentives, credits, and mandated changes to the building and sewer codes. These considerations underscore the importance of pilots to evaluate the effectiveness of these strategies used in other cities, using a combination of direct measurement, quantifiable assessments of targets and results, and modeling of impacts. Well, enough about us, back to you. The City Council has addressed this in a suite of bills that are before us today. And against the background that I've described at some length, the bills before the committee contain many useful and additional and important elements of a comprehensive stormwater management plan. The administration looks forward to working with the Council on pursuing innovative and alternative techniques to improve water quality. And the administration appreciates the need for a comprehensive stormwater management plan, and in particular for source control measurements. We do support the use of BMPs as a stormwater management technique. Taking the package of stormwater bills as a whole, the administration is concerned that any mandates for implementation of BMPs on both public and private property may not be useful at this stage in the development of BMP strategies. Various entities within the administration are developing basic information about the effectiveness of BMPs over time and the costs of construction and maintenance. All of that information will be important to the selection of a sound, affordable city policy, but is not available now. We believe, then, in general, that any stormwater bills have to reflect that uncertainty, cannot prescribe measures that might prove infeasible or unworkable. In short, we must develop sound policy through a thorough planning process first. Accordingly, I will focus my remarks today on the principal stormwater bill, Intro 630, as we believe that a study and report that would come out of such a bill is necessary before considering the implications of Introduction 628, 629, 321, and 178. The administration supports the spirit of Intro 630, and we will lay out today our concerns about specific elements of the bill that will require further discussion with the members of this committee and the Council. Leaving aside for the moment details about definitions and deadlines and other important line changes, I will outline here the administration's principal concerns with the bill in its current form and make certain suggestions about the framework of future discussions with the Council. Intro 630 appears to mandate a study for every water body in the city that will be as extensive as the recently completed Jamaica Bay Watershed Protection Plan. The Jamaica Bay Plan has significantly advanced the city's understanding of BMPs and other aspects of improving the ecological health of the bay. However, the study required 2 years and 2 years of time and significant resources to complete. And the implementation and monitoring of its recommendations will take several more years. DEP does not have the resources to undertake similar studies for every water body. We do not believe that such a study is feasible for every water body in the city in these conditions, and that the mandatory requirements of the proposed stormwater plans will have to be limited. Intro 630 also appears to expand the focus of such efforts on BMPs for the control of the quality of stormwater discharge through separate stormwater sewer systems. Although the city agrees that all untreated discharges must be controlled by BMPs where appropriate, the fact is that CSOs are the major source of water quality problems in New York City right now, as you outlined in your introductory remarks. We must prioritize efforts that will minimize CSOs and cannot afford to undertake related efforts that, however well-intentioned, will take the focus off CSOs. CSO management to date has been achieved primarily by in-pipe and end-of-pipe solutions, such as regulator improvements, modifications to treatment plants, and construction of storage tanks. We have already quantified the improvements in capture rates associated with known end-of-pipe solutions that were incorporated into consent orders, and are looking at the BMP strategies for cost-effective additional improvements in the expected CSO capture rate. But we do not believe that the available evidence supports the exclusive use of BMPs to resolve the CSO problem. Ideally, any stormwater management policy will be broad and flexible enough to allow for good, informed choices between BMP and non-BMP strategies, and then informed choices among the various BMP options. And we note that that combined approach is one taken by other cities. The plan that would be required by Intro 630 would mandate BMPs on both public and private properties. The administration believes that we should think carefully about the equity of imposing unknown costs for uncertain gains, as well as the oversight that would be required for privately maintained BMPs. With regard to the specific plan elements required by Intro 630, many may be sensible in the future and indeed are inevitable. However, before the completion of our pilot studies, many required elements are simply infeasible. One example that we pull out is Section C1 Roman 2, which would require a statement of all the properties or areas in each water body where each BMP is feasible. To make that statement, we would have to have better knowledge of the technical requirements of each BMP and the feasibility of construction and field conditions over time, and that knowledge will come from our pilot projects. We would also have to have more extensive mapping than is currently available. Other mandatory elements would force the city to make premature judgments subject to revision after the pilot projects and other ongoing efforts are completed. Examples include the requirements to set forth the metrics to be used for measurement, for cost-benefit analysis of each technology, incentives, code amendments, construction standards, right-of-way protections, and modeling to support all of those conclusions. It's a lot. The mandate in Section C1 Roman 7 for the routine and contemporaneous notice of untreated CSO discharges, the locations where water quality is likely to be adversely affected by such discharge, and of the nature and duration of water quality conditions that are potentially harmful to users of affected waters, is a matter addressed, we believe, in state-issued discharge permits, and we believe that that is the appropriate forum for those changes. However, we do note that if such a requirement were interpreted as requiring real-time measurements of the amount of discharges from each CSO outfall, then DEP would be unable to comply. In summary, we look forward to working with the Council on Intro 630 to address our concerns and to develop a workable and sensible stormwater management planning process. To turn to the other specific bills for the moment, we believe that Intro 628, 629, 321, and 178 should be considered after the City issues its report and can develop a more complete understanding of the costs and benefits of specific stormwater management measures. That being said, I will discuss each of the bills in brief. Intro 628 would mandate the diversion of stormwater runoff from adjacent streets and tree pits. This mandate appears to rely on assumptions that runoff from impervious surfaces will benefit street trees, or at least not harm them, and that the area beneath the sidewalk that is created to contain this runoff is stable enough to maintain adequate drainage over time. The Parks Department in particular is concerned that runoff containing varying amounts of contaminants, including motor oil and salt, will harm trees and thereby jeopardize our Million Tree Initiative and investment. While the City has not reached a final decision on whether its street tree pits can be used for stormwater management, it is convinced that supporting research is still in its infancy. We note that DEP is currently studying the effectiveness and cost of 5 advanced tree pits in its Jamaica-based study, and the construction and monitoring of that pilot will take 3 years to complete. In addition, the mandatory inclusion of stormwater chambers in all tree pits would impose significant additional costs and would thereby drastically limit the budgeted plantings in the administration's ambitious tree planting program. We believe that it is prudent to withhold mandatory stormwater diversion towards street trees, which happen to be the smallest scale and most vulnerable plant installations in New York City, until we can develop information about the short or long-term impacts of such action. Regarding Intro 629, the administration recognizes the need for an incorporation of stormwater management at the design stage, according to well-thought-out standards. These standards should reflect our understanding of construction, operation, and maintenance costs, as well as the effects, if any, on property damage, business loss, and damage to infrastructure and economic vitality. Such standards should also reflect our understanding of the applicability, cost-effectiveness, efficiency and durability of different BMPs. Finally, such standards should account for oversight and compliance during and after construction. Since this bill refers to standards to be developed through the planning process, anticipated in Intro 630, the administration believes that it is premature to impose a shifting standard now on capital projects of a certain size. Regarding Intro 321, the administration has similar concerns related to the application of standards that do not yet and cannot yet exist. We have to know what works first, and the specific cross-reference used as an example in the bill may well be obsolete when the planning process is concluded. It is important not to authorize on-site infiltration BMPs where soil conditions are unsuitable. Finally, this provision again raises the issue of appropriate oversight of privately maintained BMPs. All of these issues will be addressed in the Interagency BMP Task Force report and in the pilot projects undertaken as a result of the Jamaica Bay Plan. Finally, Intro 178 deals with the real problem, dry wells for on-site stormwater drainage. However, this bill would drastically slow the issuance of permits by the Department of Buildings, as DEP would first have to review the methodology and findings of every soil boring and percolation test across the city. There is also a question of whether the bill is consistent with the previous provision, 24.526 of the Administrative Code, dealing with off-site stormwater disposal, and whether the bill would render the off-site stormwater disposal requirement a nullity. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I and my colleagues in the administration would be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland, for your comprehensive testimony. We appreciate the amount of work that went into it, and it is certainly recognized by this chair that you're doing a lot. You've focused a lot of brainwaves on stormwater management, certainly. I guess my preliminary comments would be, and this is an issue that kind of transcends just this particular suite of bills or this or the issue of stormwater, and that is the the need before the clock runs out on this administration and on this council to crystallize in some form legislation that will keep the spirit of Plan YC and the environmental consciousness of this committee and this council, moving forward once we're not here. And it's critically important to get that done. And it is certainly, it's very easy, perhaps even constructive, to put forward a host of reasons why something can't happen or can't happen now unless X, Y, or Z happens first. But as the mayor himself is fond of pointing out, isn't there a clock up in the bullpen or something like that with like time remaining, days, hours, minutes, weeks, seconds, months, or whatever, until we're all vaporized? There is need to figure out a way to get this done, like before we're gone. And so I'm heartened by the passage in your statement that talks about, in summary, we look forward, this is a quote, we look forward to working with the council on Intro 630 to address our concerns and to develop a workable and sensible stormwater management planning process. I am interpreting this passage as one in which my wife went to the doctor. I want to see if this is hold on, she went to the doctor.
Sure.
Hello, you okay? Is everything all right? Okay, fine. I'm sharing the hearing. I just want to make sure that everything was okay. A lot of people are listening to this call. Everything's okay? Oh, fine. Okay. Great. Okay, bye-bye. Yep. Okay, bye-bye. She's fine. She's fine. It was one of these things where, I said, call me no matter what, even if I'm... That was not like a Rudy Giuliani, situation or whatever. I didn't offer her to say hello to the NRA or the Klingons or whoever he was talking to at the time. I forget who he was addressing.
If you wanted sympathy, she would have been sick, right?
Right. If I wanted sympathy, she would have actually been sick, and I would have reported that, you know. Anyway, where were we? Well, I was, so I interpret this statement to be that you recognize the imperative of getting a bill done. Is that a fair assessment?
We look forward to working with you on a bill, yes. Okay.
And so then the and that's good, and we certainly appreciate that that commitment. That's on 6:30, right? On 6:30.
Correct.
So it would be the administration's belief that there's enough common ground that we share, significant to put pen to paper and get something done on stormwater. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so we're getting a bill, ladies and gentlemen. So that's a good thing. Now, with regard to the trees, which one is that? Which is the tree bill? 628. Oh, and we're joined by Mike McMahon, the savior of Arlington Marsh. We appreciate your being here. I had a little role in that too, and Mike and I had a nice boat ride where we looked at it from the water. It's a whole Arlington Marsh story. It'll be a chapter in my book, so you'll get to see it. With regard to the trees, we've got it would be it would just seem that if we didn't take this opportunity of the planting of 1 million trees to do at least something to use that critical endeavor to make some level of impact on stormwater mitigation, it would seem a shame. I mean, we have street trees all over the city now. These you indicated in your statement that there are concerns that the tree pits, or they'll get oil, they'll get grease, they'll get antifreeze, they'll get other kinds of noxious things in there that could deleteriously impact the vegetation, and we understand that. But those things are happening now in tree pits, and a lot of the trees I see around the city kind of look fine. And I will indicate that at least in my district, the Parks Department, to its credit, is taking some of the pre-existing tree pits and retrofitting them to make them bigger, deeper, and more able to have to be a receptacle, if you will, for stormwater. So this is something that the Parks Department is doing on existing tree pits right now, and so we have 1 million trees to be planted, and to miss this opportunity seems silly in the extreme. And while we may differ on what kind of substructure we put in there to sort of formally engineer some kind of chamber under there or whatever, it would seem a shame to miss this opportunity. So I would like to think that going forward in the city, when we plant trees, we'll be doing something for the air and for carbon sequestration and all that. But if we can create some real measurable value added for stormwater with tree planting, we can and should do that, and it should be crystallized within a bill. So I'm still bullish on the tree pit bill, and I want to know why we can't do that.
I'm going to defer to representative of Parks. I don't know if you want to swear him in first.
Okay, Samara. You go. Oh, you got it. Oh, you didn't even know the button thing yet. Okay. That's when the light is off. The microphone is on. So now you can.
Sir, would you state your name, please?
I'm Bram Gunther, and I'm the Deputy Director of Forestry and Horticulture for the Parks Department.
Hi, Brian. Do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth today?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. He tells the truth every day, I'm sure, but, you know.
Talk to my wife.
Okay. I just spoke to mine. You
Right,
called
that's
her
why
up.
I brought it up.
Right.
Well, for us, the issue is, as you've stated, and you've stated also, the issue is actually more about the drainage of a street tree pit. Although we'll never be able to completely quantify what chemicals are in the stormwater runoff from a sidewalk or the road, it's the ability of a pit that's usually 5 by 8. Historically, it used to be 3 by 3, and even as you mentioned, we're going back and retrofitting as many pits as we can. There's still a small space. And in storm events of any kind, and I couldn't quantify that at the moment, but a spectrum of storm events, that street tree pit might be waterlogged. And as it's waterlogged, in general, even if there were no pollutants in the water itself, a waterlogged pit could kill a tree. If you then add salt and bleach and motor oil and what other chemicals might be there, it could ultimately kill the tree. So we feel from the Parks Department, in particular Forestry and Horticulture, that we need to study what's coming in, at what rate it's coming in, the rate of drainage, before we willy-nilly create all these stormwater capture entries into the street tree pit. So we just would like to collect data.
Well, I'm the last one to, you know, to go, you know, willy-nilly on anything, but presumably a bigger tree pit would allow for more assimilation, less waterlogging, you know, better ability for the tree to you know, to have the area be dispersed. And there has you know, got to be a line that we can draw, that if we're more aggressive than if we go too aggressive, we're going to end up killing trees, and like, we don't want to do that. But we should, you know, figure out the best design possible, and put that forward. I mean, this is not, you know, planting trees is not a new concept. I don't mean to be flip or anything, but there has got to be sort of the ultimate, you know, design or whatever, and that's really what we're calling for, particularly on the precipice of planting 1 million trees. It would be, what was that? To plant 1 million trees and then sort of retrofit those 1 million tree pits, once we figure out the best way to do it, would seem like a waste of resources, and it wouldn't get done. So those 1 million trees should be planted with the tree pit design that you know, accomplishes the multiple purposes of all the air quality benefits which come from trees, as well as water quality benefits. And that's really what we're asking for. And to not act on that is you know, not acceptable from the position of this committee. And I ask you, if you had to, if the mayor called you up tomorrow and gave you an order and indicated that he wanted like the best tree pit design, how would you, and he wanted it done like right away, you know, how would you proceed in doing that? What would you do?
Well, we're already contemplating the best tree pit designs. We are evolving over time, as you mentioned, larger pits, deeper excavation, which gives more room for the water to be held. using a layer of either crushed stone or crushed glass, which we can use, which is recycled, to be able to access the water. If we can, having whole block plantings where you have an entire trench, like some of the medians are in the streets, using what's called structural soil, which not only allows for road-bearing weight on top, but underneath for more space for the roots to both find nutrients and water. So we are trying to do that. I think the difference is, the distinction to be made is that, of course, all the water that's running down the sidewalk is going to find its, or a portion of it's going to find its way into the street tree pit. What I think you're saying, and I think we're contemplating over time, is making cuts in the road. So when the water is coming down the road, some of it naturally is going to go into the pit. And no matter what the size is, we're still worried that there is some threshold where the water won't drain, because depending upon where it is, and if it doesn't drain, will that then kill the trees? So the answer is yes, every day we're trying to make the street trees better, wider, deeper, and more able to hold and contain water, but we just are a little nervous, a little anxious about doing all the street tree pits that way, particularly in areas where they have to be smaller because the infrastructure demands it, without having some kind of data to work on.
Well, certainly what this represents is the same kind of give and take we always get when we're making legislation, and we have elements of 628 or 629 or whatever it is that perhaps would not be consistent. Am I buzzing? Is this buzzing? Is the speaker buzzing? Okay. That there's some elements of the bill that wouldn't be completely consistent with tree health unless we do further study or whatever. And this is how bills morph on in negotiations, and we kind of get the best thing that we can get, and we crystallize that, and then we go forward with research and development and other things that aren't quite ready yet, and that's okay. What we're looking for is to get this done now, so that when this unprecedented planting of 1 million trees goes in, we get something, and I think that makes a lot of sense. Would you like to comment on that?
Yes, absolutely. In spirit it makes sense, and in spirit we agree with you. And I think because we're trying to make all the pits larger and deeper, we essentially agree with that. We're just, as I said, a little anxious about making those cuts right
now.
Yeah,
but the bill doesn't actually say that we have to divert water from the street into the trees. It's not really what the bill says, and so.
Okay.
Yeah, so the bill doesn't really, doesn't say that. So, and again, we never claim to ever create on our own, just from the council, like perfect legislation that we don't have to talk to the administration about, and we just go out and pass. We are very much dependent on your ability as experts to inform our legislative process here, so we get legislation that's made better by consultation with you. This is how
I agree.
This is how we get it done.
Yes.
We're getting 629 too, I guess. And so, yeah, we would.
628, I have to say.
Yeah.
That
was it?
628.
Oh, 628. Okay, I'm just, math's not my specialty. Math's not my specialty. So whatever number it is, we should give bills names. That's like the tree pit bill. That's easier for people to understand. Yeah, they're all named Bill. Yeah, I guess. I guess I'm infectious here or something like that, and Dan is picking up on that, and we have Bill de Blasio here from Brooklyn, a great tree planter in his own right.
Details.
Okay.
With regard to the capital construction bill, with regard to the capital construction bill, it also, doesn't really impose sort of strict standards. It generally indicates that as we increase city government's built environment, and we're building these projects, that we have an eye on stormwater, and we do the best job we can with regard to mitigating the impacts on stormwater from city construction projects in kind of like the best way possible. And it seems pretty innocuous, and something that we ought to be focusing on, and we ought to be leading by example. And so I could see opposition that's born out of the imposition of some kind of strict regimen or something that you just don't agree with. But this is really not the case with that bill, as I understand it, is that when we're doing capital projects, we should have a planning process in which we mitigate stormwater impacts on those projects, and that does not sound unreasonable when we're looking at a situation, by your own admission, where CSO discharges or whatever, which we have a 70% capture rate, where through end-of-pipe solutions or whatever, we're only going to get up to 75% capture, which is still going to leave us with billions and billions of gallons of CSO problems and all kinds of stormwater problems. So it seems that everything we can be doing, we should be doing. So I'm at a little bit of a